Hello and welcome back to Mr. Excalibur. My name is Arthur and today we are reviewing the Gold Lion Katana by Cold Steel. One of the things that first interested me in this sword was the idea of a folded steel blade. I hadn't seen one. They advertised a nice Damascus steel blade, and at the price point I was interested to see what they would get. I was also interested in the fact that there weren't a lot of reviews out there of it, and yet the model had been around for a while. Now I don't know if that's because of the somewhat negative stimulus of the or I should say stigma of the Cold Steel name. I actually got this one and another Cold Steel product at the same time. I got this one first, and so it was my first. These are my first impressions of it. So I wanted to see what we. So the next thing that we're going to see here is the unboxing. After that, some footage of one other person that I could find on the internet who has actually reviewed this before. Ironically, they also have bought another Cold Steel product, and then we're going to see my own experiences cutting with it, and then at the end some overall impressions. So let's go ahead and see that footage.
So here we are unboxing the Gold Lion Katana from Cold Steel. Straightforward boxing. I actually got this sword through Amazon, as I mentioned before. So it was an interesting thing to see how this was going to come to me. I had long ago been warned about, ordering swords through Amazon. And quite honestly, the only reason why I did was because not Gold Lion, but Cold Steel as a brand name is such kind of a popular brand name amongst things like folding knives or fixed-bladed edge weapons, and they've got such a big name that's much more diverse amongst the various adult toys market than just swords. Swords is just one of the things that they do, that I thought this is probably going to be okay. And so I went ahead and ordered through them. One of the interesting things about when I unboxed this sword was, first of all, the Gold Lion Katana is one of their more upscale models, and it came with a very nice sword bag versus the straight, black or blue simple bag. So that was kind of nice. There's kind of the Cold Steel motto there down at the end. But one of the other interesting things that I found out about this sword, as well as another product that I got from Cold Steel, as you guys are seeing here, was that the katana was shipped very much kind of like Cold Steel's knives, where you have the katana that was shipped outside of its outside of its scabbard. And one of the things that I kind of was interested in when I pulled this thing out was the smell. It kind of smelled of fresh spray paint. And I don't know if that's really what it was that they, the gold on the Gold Lion. I don't know what the deal was. But the blade had a cardboard sheath around it, and underneath a plastic one that just kind of holds in oil. So it did come lubricated, came in very sharp. This was one that I definitely was impressed with how sharp it was. It also comes with a folded steel blade, and so you get that nice hata pattern on it, which I thought was very nice. So just some different things as I was unboxing this thing. Came outside the saya, which is not typical. Usually a lot of these Chinese sword makers that are making these katanas, they come already in scabbards, sometimes with a kind of a waxy substance around the blades, sometimes not. Sometimes they're not lubricated at all, and so you kind of have to wonder about, you know, how they were storing these things. Unfortunately, at this point, what I'm noticing as I'm checking some of the pieces of the sword here is that the end cap is loose. Now, this is supposedly one of Cold Steel's higher end weapons, and yet I'm getting it here, and the Kashira, or is it the fushi at the end is a little loose. Everything else was reasonably tight, but I just kind of bugged about that. As you start getting into those higher priced swords, you kind of expect the quality control when it leaves the door to be a little better. Here you get kind of a nice up close look at the blade. Sorry if the camera work isn't the best. I was trying to get a look at the hata. I don't think I did a very good job. But I did notice that the Ito wrap was on there, but I could move around some of the knots and the diamonds, and there is the fushi that I could kind of wiggle around, which I thought was, I thought that was kind of unnerving. I guess maybe I'm naive or what the deal is, but you start getting into these slightly higher price points, and you expect just a little bit more with a sword and how it's coming out. One of the cool things about it, of course, is that it makes the whoosh, the whoop kind of sound, or the takakazi, the breaking wind, or the cutting of the wind. I forget what it's called. Breaking wind is something else. Sorry, guys. But that was kind of a neat thing with this sword. One of the things I was immediately taken with was just how light it is. It is quite possibly the lightest katana I have seen by far. This is another problem though. It really rattled in the sheath. Stayed in the saya, but it rattled in it pretty bad. So a couple things I just was kind of a little off-put by it when I first got it. And so, like I said, it was just exceptionally light, so I was kind of really looking forward to how this thing was going to behave in testing. But some of the aesthetics, I just thought, for a sword that's in this price point, I thought was kind of meh. Now, obviously, cutting paper for this thing was no problem at all. It was sharp. The quality of the blade, I wouldn't dispute. I'll talk a little bit about that later when we kind of do the wrap up here. Some opening concerns looking at this right out of the box. I was though impressed with the weight of it, how light it was, and the overall look at the hata on the blade. But there I'm hitting the tsuka right there, and it rattles. So a couple strikes against this thing right out of the box.
Hello everybody. I wanted to make a video review on the Cold Steel Gold Line Katana. I've been looking for this sword for a while now. I have the Warrior Katana version of it from Cold Steel, and I love that sword. So this is the Gold Line Katana. As you can see, it's super thin compared to the Warrior Katana. Maybe half, maybe even more than half. The Warrior Katana is wider, and it's heavier, but it doesn't feel twice as heavy. But it is. You can feel the change immediately. This sword, I don't know if you saw the other one, but when I was balancing it, you just leave it flat on its back. It literally stays like this. This sword is so well balanced, guys, that it stands up on its own and it stands in its spine. See, I'm not moving it around. It's just going up by itself. It likes to balance on its freaking spine. This sword very, very, very dry, very beautiful, guys. One thing I have noticed about this sword, yeah, that basically calls me out a lot is that even though it is a thinner sword, the spine is still very, very thick. So it's not a weak sword. I've hit it again. I mean, I have a small stand outside that has a 4x4 where I hit like balls and stuff like that. And I started like beating it a little bit. This thing was like just chopping chunks out of it. Very strong guy, very strong sword, guys. No damage to the blade. But this swords come from cold steel. A lot of people say that they're very sharp, but they're not. Even this one, you can feel the edge. It's rolled to this side, to the right. If you're looking at it from the front of towards the edge, all the edge is rolled to the right side. So basically, I'm just gonna scrap it to fix the edge. It's sharp and it's just not finished completely. But very, very maneuverable sword, guys. Something that I wanted, you know, especially since my arm got damaged and all that stuff. It allows me to still practice without like hurting myself even more. I would completely recommend this sword for anyone looking for a better cutter, for something that's more maneuverable. This sword is very simple, kind of the same little round guard, you know, black wrapping and the head cap. It has a couple of little lions. They look kind of goofy, but I mean, this sword, the quality of the sword is the blade and just the balance of it. I've never seen a sword like this. Even this other Suyo, very simplistic sword, but at the same time very beautiful. The only thing I would like better on this sword, I guess, is if the little lions have more details, because like I said, they look very, very funny. They look, I don't know, like a little 3-year-old put them together, and yeah, here they are.
It's time to do some cutting with the gold line katana from Cold Steel. As we mentioned in the unboxing and when we were first introducing this sword is exceptionally light. This sword, you know, you could, for someone who doesn't have a great amount of arm strength, I mean, it would be really nice for them. This is something that a experienced practitioner could really kind of use, mainly because of just how light it is. It is a folded steel blade. Now, while I'm kind of just showing off how, you know, basic of a swordsman I am, wanted to talk a little bit about folded steel blades as far as in the modern day. In other words, is there really a need to fold steel? There's a lot of mystique about the Japanese and how they had to fold the steel over and over and over again. This was to remove impurities. This was to purify the steel that they got, and because quite honestly the steel that they got really wasn't all that good. And of course this thing, you know, hacks through water bottles, you know, like nothing. So I'm not going to talk a great deal about how it's cutting here. It did the job, but more along the line of, you know, what the deal is with it being a folded steel blade, a Damascus blade. These days, Damascus really only means that you have several different steels that have been folded into the single sword. This is one to give it that kind of high carbon, low carbon makeup, which is very similar to what the Japanese did. However, in our modern times, the real only reason to fold steel like this is to get that hata, is to get that that folded steel blade look, that pattern along the side of the blade. With modern steels, there is no reason to fold steel like this other than to give it that look. And that's something important to understand, because a lot of people have this perception that a folded steel katana is better than a monosteel katana. In many ways, unless it's done right, that actually is not true at all. I'm going to break here from the steel talk, and this is something that I wanted to do with the empty milk carton, and this is something I've kind of included in the sword tests and the cutting tests. And this is something I saw someone else do, and I thought it was pretty good. And that was when you got such a light object that's not being held down by the water. How does it take when you actually cut it when it's empty? And you can see there, this sword filleted it open. And I'm just bringing it up to the camera here just to kind of show you in one shot there, and that's an empty milk bottle, and it filleted it. So yes, this one is very, very sharp. When it came to the TV box, I gotta admit I didn't have a lot of success. This one really didn't plow into it much, as sharp as it was. And what I've noticed is when it comes to the TV box, which by the way guys, isn't just cardboard, it's also hardened cardboard that's gotten wet and then baked in the sun. There's also styrofoam packing in there that makes it a much harder target. And what I'm noticing is that the lighter blades, whether they have a bohea in it or not, this one does have a bohea, so it's even lighter still. They don't plow into that thing very much. The heavier blades, just their weight of them, they're just as solid, they plow into that a lot more. Now, folded steel or not, Damascus, doesn't matter. The fact is, this is a carbon steel blade, ladies and gentlemen, and if you don't oil it, it will rust. Please oil these blades. There's been a lot of time and effort taken to create them, especially these when you start to get to the higher price points, so oil them so you'll be able to play with them for another day.
Now for some overall impressions of the sword after we've seen the unboxing, some testing. So let's take a look at it. My overall impression of the Gold Line Katana by Cold Steel is that from what I've seen with some of the things of how it cut, how it came out of the box, the condition that it was in, and the quality of the blade, is it seems to me Cold Steel really was interested in getting out there a nice Damascus steel blade, something that was very different than some of their other products. And when it came to some of the other aesthetics of the sword, it seemed like it was just kind of very thrown together. The Ito wrap that I had around it was not very comfortable. As I mentioned during the unboxing, the handle rattled. There were several different pieces that were very loose. And so it seems as though they made a beautiful blade. The Damascus pattern on the blade is really nice. It's a nice sharp blade, and it cuts beautifully, as you guys saw in the cutting footage. But like I said, when it comes to some of the other aesthetics, it seems as though it was kind of rushed. I almost smelled something that was like spray paint when it came to the gold features on the tsuka here, which was very, very strange. The whole thing of it being the gold lion, some of the gold features on it really are not all that sharp and are not all that impressive. I would have expected for the price point, which was, these, if you go to Cold Steel, they're going for, just under $1,000. However, retail, it's much lower than that. It's, it's hovering around that $500, $600 mark. I was lucky I was actually able to get this for a little less. I actually bought this off Amazon, which I know is a no-no, but Cold Steel is a big enough name that I trusted what I saw there. So I know I'm probably going to get a few comments going, no, it's a fake, it's not real. Who knows? But that was my overall impression of the sword. A few other things. The eyelets here on the scabbard, they also arrived loose. So it was just, it was just kind of one more thing. A blade like this, because of how very light it is, you've heard me kind of repeat that a couple times throughout the review, my impression when I unboxed it, and of course when it was being used in the cutting. Because of how light the blade is, because of how very nice it is, however, that matched with some of the issues that I had with some of the aesthetics. I think you're probably going to find that for someone who's a serious practitioner who is going to want a lighter, fancier blade for doing things like tatami mat cutting, or for doing real Aido or Kinjutsu work in the dojo, they're probably going to find things that, when it comes to the aesthetics end, they're probably going to be able to find things that are of better quality, that are a little better for your money. And to me, that's kind of a shame, because again, it comes back to what I was saying at the beginning of this kind of wrap up here, and that is Cold Steel did a bang up job, getting out this really nice blade. Everything else was kind of but I hope this has been informative for you. I hope you guys, this is just my, my opinion. I'm not a Cold Steel fan. Yes, either way. But I was really interested in this one. Cold Steel has a number of other upscaled models. This was one of them, and that was my overall impression of this model. So that's all for now. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. Please comment. I do like the comments, and I like to respond to them. As you can see, I've got a little bit of a newer setup here. Hopefully that will work photographically a little better. And so we'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.